Hello, my name is Chris McElroy, and I'm president of Mac Inc. Video Productions, and we are here today. We reporting on the poetry with poetry expert Jerome McElroy. Explain how a concept for the poetry develops. Where does it come from?
Well, usually there's some event or some sparking experience that sets my mind thinking or puzzling over something. And when I get some time, I'll sit down and try to bring together the associations and the emotions around that experience to give it some sense, to make sense out of it. But normally there's some current experience that sparks an interest in writing something. It could be something about the present, or it could be something from my past.
What has been your greatest challenge while writing poetry?
Well, I think it's the same challenge as all writing. You want to communicate with the reader. You want to find a way to frame an experience that you've had in such a way that it connects with readers and they identify with the same experience. I think that is the fundamental challenge of poetry.
What has been your greatest reward from writing poetry?
I think there are two rewards. The first is when you finally get a poem together and you know that it makes sense and it has your own satisfaction. I think it's something like a painter. When they finish with the painting, they know they've created something new and unique. And that's the first moment. But the second moment is when some editor accepts it in a poetry journal. And then you know that someone else also believes that you've achieved a certain level of excellence in your writing.
What opportunities have been created by writing poetry?
Well, for me, I'm an economist, and most of my writing is about small islands. But writing, and so as an economist, I'm writing for a very narrow audience of island specialists. But writing poetry widens my audience to the ordinary human being who's trying to find some meaning in his or her life. And so I think that's been the great advantage of writing poetry, that you open your writing to a much wider audience.
What is the primary benefit of publishing poetry?
Well, I think it's the recognition that what you've done has achieved a certain level of excellence. The poetry editors who read poems read thousands of them, and the fact that they have chosen your work to publish means that you've achieved a certain level of acceptance. So that to me is quite a reward.
How do you deal with poetry publishers?
Well, I try to deal with them very fast. If I get a letter saying a poem's been accepted, I write back and I thank them. If they ask for changes in a line or in a word or two, I consider their suggestions very carefully because I think they've read much more poetry than I, and they know what connects again with their readership. And so I consider their suggestions very carefully, and very often I accede to their wishes.
Are there any unusual or surprising benefits to publishing poetry?
Well, I would say again, it's all about the writing. If you get published, that's the icing on the cake. But one of the unexpected benefits for me has been that you sometimes discover some recovered memories, some experiences in your past that you forgot about, that were very important, perhaps very emotional, very beautiful, maybe very difficult. But those experiences, in many ways, I've been able to recover as I do my writing.
You published a couple of poetry chapter books, Secret Themes, and I think it was Secret Themes, or was it Secret Theme?
It's the Secret Themes and Sacred Traces.
Could you explain a little bit about those two poetry books?
Certainly. Secret Themes was published last year as 26 poems, and they're mainly nature poems. Some of them are memories of my life as a young boy working with my grandfather on the farm. And it's from that experience that I think I developed a certain sensitivity to nature. Now, Sacred Traces just came out October 2008. And this chapbook is more about some gospel vignettes, stories of Jesus from the New Testament, along with a few other things. And the interesting thing about this book, The Sacred Traces, it's been nominated for the Book of the Year Award for the Conference of Christianity and Literature. So I was quite proud to get that nomination from the editor of the press. So this is, in a sense, a little deeper book because it delves into the spiritual experience of our Lord.
To what extent were your expectations about publishing a poetry chapbook met?
I think they were fully met. In both cases of my two chapbooks, I used the Finishing Line Press in Georgetown, Kentucky. And right now they're the largest publisher of chapbooks in the United States. I like them because they're very much on time. As long as you deliver everything that they need, they're going to get your book out on time, and it comes out lovely. As you can see, once again, lovely ribbons, a lovely cover designed by my wife, and then on the back, a color picture of me, photographed by my son. So I have been very impressed with their work.
Is there anything that you would like to add to conclude this interview?
Well, one thing I would say as an advantage in writing poetry is why I like it is because you discover every time you start a poem, you're going to go somewhere new. somewhere you haven't been before. And that to me is always exciting. You don't know where the poem's going to take you, what turn it's going to result in. And so in every poem, from start to finish, for me, there's always going to be a little element of surprise. And we all need a little surprise in our lives.